In this video, we will explain what a relative modulation or key change is and how to use them in your songwriting. At the end of the video, we will apply what is taught to use a key change in an existing song. In its simplest form, a song is constructed with notes from a scale. These notes will be used to create the chords and melody in the song. A song that uses the notes from a particular scale is said to be in the key of that scale. For example, a song that uses the notes from the C major scale is in the key of C major. The C major scale has the notes C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. The A natural minor scale has the notes A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. It is worth being aware that there is more than one minor scale. We won't go into detail about this here, but where we mention the minor scale, we are referring to the natural minor scale. This is also known as the Aeolian mode or the sixth mode of the major scale. You can see that the C major and A minor scales have the same set of notes, which just start and end on different notes. Because of this, these two scales are called relative scales. C major is the relative major of A minor, and A minor is the relative minor of C major. We know that a key refers to the scale that a song is created from, so you can also have relative keys. Therefore, the relative key of C major is A minor, and vice versa. We can see this by looking at the chords in each key. Chords in a key, also known as triads, are created by each using three notes from the relevant scale. The C major key has the chords 1 C major, 2 D minor, 3 E minor, 4 F major, 5 G major, 6 A minor, and 7 B diminished. And the A minor key has the chords 1 A minor, 2 B diminished, 3 C major, 4 D minor, 5 E minor, 6 F major, and 7 G major. Because these two relative keys have the same set of chords, it is easy to modulate between the two. It is worth visualizing these keys on the circle of fifths. The circle of fifths is a commonly used diagram in music theory. It shows the relationship between all of the notes in Western music and has a lot of applications. We have a video in the description if you would like to learn more about it. If you look at the circle, you'll see that it actually has two circles, an outer one and an inner one. In the 12 o'clock position on the outer circle, you'll see the letter C. In relation to keys, think of this outer circle as the major keys, so the C represents the C major key. Directly below this on the inner circle is the letter A. Think of this inner circle as the minor keys. We know that A minor is the relative minor key of C major and vice versa, and the circle confirms this. It also shows you the relative keys of any key as they are directly above or below each other. This is extremely useful to refer to when thinking about a relative modulation for your song. So now we know what relative keys are and how to find them. But how do we write a relative modulation for our song? We'll start by looking at moving from a minor key to its relative major. One of the most important relationships in major key songs is between the 5 chord and the 1 chord. Moving from 5 to 1 is called a perfect cadence. Playing this chord change will provide a very strong feeling of returning home. By doing so, it will reinforce the major key feeling. Because our relative keys share the same set of chords, we can use the 5 to 1 change to bring us back to the major key. Let's use the relative A minor and C major keys we discussed earlier to look at this. In the key of C major, the 5 to 1 change uses the G major chord and the C major chord. So if we end our A minor key chord progression on the G major chord and start our C major key progression on the C major chord, then we have a perfect cadence to bring us into the major key. In a minor key, this 5 chord from its relative major will always be the 7 chord. For example, in the key of C major, the 5 chord is G major, and in the key of A minor, the 7 chord is also G major. Listen out for this change in the following example at bar 8. We will also use a simple 1-4-5-1 progression in A minor, and then a simple 1-4-5-1 progression in C major. The impact of modulating may be more subtle with relative keys because of their closeness. Sometimes it doesn't sound like we have even changed key. If you want to really make your changes clear, then you will want to center your progression around the 1 chord, at least initially after the key change, in order to establish the new tonal center. Another cadence used in major key songs is the 4-to-1 change. It is sometimes called the Amen or plagial cadence. In a minor key, this 4 chord from its relative major will always be the 6 chord. For example, in the key of C major, the 4 chord is F major, and in the key of A minor, the 6 chord is also F major. So let's use our previous example and just change the 7 chord in bar 8 for the 6 chord. Listen out for the difference in this particular cadence when we modulate to the relative major key. You will quite often see 4 and 5 played together in a major key. Using these chords to lead to the 1 chord are the strongest way to define that you are in a major key, and are often used to start a piece or bring a song to a strong close. We'll put them together in bars 7 and 8 of our example progression. Remember that in a minor key this would be chords 6 and 7. Next we will look at changing the 7 chord to a dominant 7th chord. In a major key, the 5 chord is often played as a dominant 7th. This strengthens the cadence, really amplifying the desire for the 5 chord to resolve to 1. If you would like a full explanation of the dominant 7th, then check out our video linked in the description. Let's change our 7 chord in bar 8 to the dominant 7th to hear this strong cadence. We've looked at modulating from minor to relative major. Now let's reverse the situation and move from major to relative minor. In general, you can use any of the chords to move to the relative minor key, but let's start by looking at some more cadences. We saw earlier that a 4-to-1 change in a major key is called a plagial cadence. Handily, moving from 4-to-1 in a minor key is also called a plagial cadence. The 4 chord in a minor key is the 2 chord in its relative major key. So let's take our previous chord progressions to demonstrate this. We'll start in C major this time and change our chord in bar 8 to the 2 chord to set up our plagial cadence, with the 1 chord in the key of A minor in bar 9. You may wonder why we haven't used the 5-to-1 change in our minor key modulation, like we did when moving to a major key. The reason is because this has a weaker effect in a minor key and doesn't pull us as strongly to the tonic or 1 chord. This is because of the notes that make up our minor 5 chord. Let's look at our 5-to-1 change in C major to demonstrate this. The 5 chord in the key of C major is G major. The G major chord has the notes G, B and D. The C major chord has the notes C, E and G. Look at the middle note or 3rd note in the G major chord. It is B. This is the closest note to the root or tonic of C major. It is only half a step or a semitone away from it. This creates the strong pull or desire to resolve that we hear in the perfect cadence. Now let's do the same again in the key of A minor. The 5 chord is E minor. The E minor chord has the notes E, G and B. The middle note is now called a flat or minor third note, and in the E minor chord it is G. We've got links in the description if you'd like to learn more about chord construction. The G note is a whole step or tone away from the root or tonic of the 1 chord A minor. So we are twice the distance away from the tonic as we were in C major. This is why the sense of cadence is much weaker. The minor third note isn't demanding we move to the tonic as strongly as the third note did. So a common songwriting technique is to change this chord to a major chord. In our example, if we change E minor to E major, the only note that changes is the flat or minor third, moving it up half a step or semitone and recreating the effect we had in the major key with the perfect cadence. Let's demonstrate this with our chord progression example. We'll start in the key of C major. On the first playthrough, we will end in bar 8 on the minor 5 chord from the relative minor. This is chord 3 in the major key. We'll then modulate to the key of A minor. We'll end on the 7 chord to take us around to the C major key again. We'll then repeat the whole thing, but on the second major key section, we will end on the major 3 chord we discussed to create our cadence. Listen to the difference that this small change makes. We are now undoubtedly in a minor key. We will also play the cadence again at the end of the progression to bring it to a close. Cadences like this are useful for bringing songs to a secure close. As with our major key perfect cadence, we can change the major 5 chord to a dominant 7th chord. As before, this will enhance the cadence. Here it is in bar 8 of our progression. We've explained the basic mechanics of the relative modulation, and you should be able to use it in a few different ways. The only problem with our examples so far is they only used simple chord progressions that started on the 1 chord of their respective keys. As you may be aware, this is not the norm throughout a song. To provide a more real-world example, we will start with the song we created in our major key song masterclass. If you would like to see the reasoning behind its structure, check out the masterclass video we made for it. We'll give you the link at the end of this video. Let's listen to the original song. The first thing to note is that the song is in the key of G major. Don't panic, as everything we learnt applies to any major key. We simply follow the same rules for the relevant Roman numerals and it will work in exactly the same way. If we consult the circle of fifths, we can see that G is in the 1 o'clock position on the outer circle. We know that the relative minor will be directly below this. So our relative minor key is E minor. The song has the structure intro, verse, chorus, bridge, chorus. The two most obvious candidates for a key change would be the bridge or the final chorus. This is because later on in songs, after a few repeats, it tends to feel like we want to move the song on somewhere new and reduce monotony. If you were listening closely or have seen the full explainer video, you will know that the start of the final chorus has different chords to the other chorus repeats. This already provides a nice change, so for today we will modulate the relative minor for the bridge and then back to the relative major for the final chorus. The second chorus ends on bar 36 with a 5 chord. As we are now moving to the relative major, we'll change this to the major 3 chord, B major. This strongly draws us into the bridge, where we expect to hear the 1 chord of the minor key, but we'll preserve the structure of the existing bridge using the same Roman numerals. This delays the new 1 chord E minor until bar 41. We'll keep the inversions as before, but now we'll use the 5 major chord to lead us to the 1 chord in bars 41 and 43 to reinforce the minor key. Listen to the very different angst this brings the bridge compared to before. Then in bar 44 we use chords 6 and 7 dominant 7th to provide a strong cadence back to the major key. This is frustrated in bar 45 because in the final chorus we use the relative minor chord of 1 here, but the overall effect is that we've moved somewhere else again. See how many considerations there are when preparing even a simple relative key change in your song. The best approach is to experiment with it in your own songwriting, and if it doesn't give your song what you think it needs, then don't worry about it. It is simply a single tool in the songwriting toolkit. Let's listen to our revised song to see how it now sounds. Learn how to write a major key song from start to finish by watching the video on screen now.